here. Subscribe so you never miss an upload.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor DungeonMaster, and this is the home of independent and homebrew role-playing games. Today we're taking a sneak peek at Candela Obscura, the first role-playing game from Critical Role, brought to us by Darrington Press. And what's interesting is the system uses D6s, and I'm noticing a broader trend throughout the industry and a new love and appreciation for this type of die. I just read through the Quickstart rules for our Candela Obscura. The lead designers are Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall, from an original concept by Taliesin Jaffe and Chris Lockey. The game is a rules-light horror mystery game set in New Fair, which is kind of like a fantasy Victorian London, and player characters are members of Candela Obscura, a secret organization that investigates supernatural phenomenon. The best way I could describe it is steampunk horror, and magic is real, but the average person doesn't know it exists. The engine is a dice pool mechanic that uses D6s. They're calling it the Illuminated Worlds dice pool system, so I assume there are more games forthcoming. You toss your D6s, and on a roll of 1 to 3, your character's attempt is a failure. On a 4 to 5, the roll is a mixed success. You accomplish what you wanted, but it comes at a cost. On a 6 result, the roll is a full success, and on multiple 6s, the roll is a critical success. You get what you want and something extra. There are also drives, a pool of points you can spend to roll additional dice. This provides the player and the character with lots of flexibility. And the game features 3 core attributes: nerve, cunning, and intuition. And if 3 stats and a D6 dice pool sounds familiar, it's because Candela Obscura borrows the concept from John Harper's Blades in the Dark, which the designers acknowledge. Both games share the same DNA, which is totally legit, because as we know from the OGL scandal, game mechanics cannot be copyrighted. Instead, the etiquette is you tip your hat to any designer who influenced you, which they have done. And in Blades in the Dark, John Harper tips his hat to Apocalypse World. The Powered by the Apocalypse and Dungeon World systems use 2d6, 5 or less you fail, 6 to 8 you succeed at a cost, and 9 or more is a total success. Other popular D6-based RPGs include Alien, Tiny Dungeon, and Dungeon World. From what I've seen, Candela Obscura looks perfectly cool. I like the character sheet. It's clean and uses control panel format. It's easy to read. I like the damage system, where characters suffer scars and players get to choose them, and after 3 scars you're dead. I love the mechanics that allow players to alter the narrative, and I am looking forward to seeing more and watching Critical Role play it. Some caveats. I think the succeed at a cost mechanic is something of a double-edged sword. On one hand, I like the idea that rolls aren't totally pass-fail, like in Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to jump over a bottomless chasm and you need to roll an 11 and you roll a 10, well, that's the end of your character. I like the idea of the Game Master saying, I'll allow you to succeed barely, but you have to pay a cost. What price do you want to pay? And the player can think about it for a second and say, okay, I jump over and barely make it, but I drop my iron rations. And the Game Master could say, no, this is a life or death roll. How about you drop that giant sack of treasure you're carrying, or your +5 Holy Avenger? It's your choice. Succeed at a cost is a great mechanic if your players are super creative and good at improv, and they see the Game Master as a collaborator as opposed to an opponent. But if you have players who are not as creative or skilled at improv, it can lead to a game that's very slow and repetitive as they struggle to think up appropriate costs and negotiate with the Game Master. I'm sure that's not going to be a problem on camera, because that's really playing to the cast of Critical Role's strength. But for average players, I find that after a while, it can get to be a challenge. For my money, when it comes to flexible D6 systems, I think Easy D6 by DM Scotty from Runehammer Games is best in class. First, you have exploding dice. You roll a pool of D6s, but if you roll a 6, it's a critical success, and you get to roll the dice again. And if it comes up 6, you get to roll it again, and it keeps going. I've rolled as many as 4 or 5 in a row. And every 6 is a bonus effect, so you can do massive damage. And there are karma points you can spend to raise your rolls and make them 6s. It is really great and so engaging. Scotty calls the game master the rabble rouser. If you watch a game of Easy D6 from a distance, you'll see like 8 players jumping up and down and giving each other high fives, and no one's looking on a cell phone. I just think it's super engaging. You also don't have skills or even ability scores. If you're unskilled at something, you roll 1 die. If you're skilled, it's 2 dice, and if you have some sort of advantage, it might be 3 dice, and a 5 or 6 on any of them will result in a success. At the same time, though, you can customize your characters by class, and there's a list of almost 30 feats. And you can mix and match and have a barbarian that's good at sneaking, or a rogue that's good at fighting with a rapier. And it takes about 2 minutes to create a completely customized character. That's less time than I spend thinking of the character's name. I also like the writing style. Scotty has this conversational tone and it feels like he's talking right to you. There's even a cartoon Scotty that interjects, and subheadings with titles like, "Oh crap, I rolled a 1," and "Kick ass, I rolled a 6," and "Do I have 10,000 hit points?" No. So many games follow the WotC formula of beginning with, "What is a role-playing game?" and "How do the dice work?" It's refreshing to see someone just talk to you like they're talking to you across a kitchen table. So if you like Dungeons & Dragons, you'll love Easy D6, and it's well supported. The new Book of Quests is out now. It just came out. It features something like 20 adventures or so, and they are great. I play tested some of them. A review is forthcoming, but just take it from me, they're a lot of fun. In addition, Scotty is working on adapting Easy D6 to other genres right now, including horror and post-apocalyptic, which I've play-tested, and it is fantastic. I played a librarian called Angry Artie, and he was a lot of fun. Now, if your players are like mine and they can't bear to part with their precious 20-sided dice, you might want to check out my game, Deathbringer, which uses a D20 and D&D ability scores, but replaces skills and feats with a pool of D6s called Deathbringer dice, and you can spend them to add bonuses to any D20 roll or increase your damage or block incoming damage, creating an experience that is fast-paced and feels more immersive and cinematic. So why are all these rules-light D6 systems trending now? Well, I think there's a few reasons. First, as far as Critical Role is concerned, I think it just looks a lot better on camera. It's just boring to watch them stop to look up a rule or take 2 minutes to figure out initiative, like who's going first. And it plays to their strengths. They're actors. They're good at improv. So this system allows them to improv. But for the average player, rules-light systems allow you to play more game in less time. You don't have to look up any rules or cross-reference any tables. You can stay in the moment, stay with the narrative, and the Game Master can adjust. And I personally love mechanics that allow the player some input into the narrative. And that's not a new idea. It's a really old idea. It comes from James Bond 007 by Victory Games. Back in the 80s, they had hero points, and you could spend them to make a failure a success, bump up your level of success, or even alter your environment. Third, I'd like to think this is the beginning of a renaissance of role-playing games where not everybody is always playing D&D. Yeah, I love D&D and all its variants, but there are other games out there, and even if you don't like Critical Role, you gotta give them props for letting people know that these games exist, for running one-shots in Call of Cthulhu and mentioning Blades in the Dark and designing their own games. I think the world is better when there are more games in it. And if anyone from Critical Role ever sees this, my one recommendation for your game as you move forward, what I want to see is better binding than Wizards of the Coast. They're the biggest producer of role-playing games in the entire world, but their binding always falls apart. Come on, Darrington, I'm looking for stitched binding and maybe a couple ribbons. Now, there is this belief among some people that Critical Role and flexible games and collaborative storytelling mechanics are somehow story gaming, like they're not real role-playing, but I would beg to differ. I enjoy old school games. I love the danger of it, the lethality of it. But at the same time, I don't want to look up THAC0 and saving throws and wait 10 minutes to take my turn. Great stories and exciting, engaging game mechanics are not mutually exclusive. You can have both. In my Reviled Society campaign, we get really into the story and the character backgrounds and the role play. And we also have rooftop chases and combats. Only in Deathbringer, combats take 10 to 20 minutes, not 10 minutes per round. So I'm happy to see game mechanics moving in a more flexible direction, and I'm looking forward to more from Darrington Press and other indie designers. I'm also looking forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Also below, you'll find links to Candela, Obscura, Easy D6, the Book of Quests, and my own game, Deathbringer, as well as links to Patreon where you can access Dungeon Craft Discord server and get tons of bonus content. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s or 6s, depending on the system you're playing. Here's Deathbringer to play us out.
Once there was this kid who collected every D&D, but what's he ever made even when their binding fell apart, and they said that they were raising their prices. He couldn't quite explain it. He said he'd always bought them. Get ECD6 and the Book of Quests and the Deathbringer game at the link below. Join Patreon for bonus content and watch more Dungeon Craft.